So, I finally watched Fooly Cooly. Ever since I started getting into anime, after actually knowing what it was, I have heard of the anime by the name of Fooly Cooly, spelled FLCL. I always heard amazing things about the series, and never once did I ever hear anything negative once I had mentioned the series to people, and when I would tell people it was on my list to watch, my friends would very excitedly tell me, yes, good choice. Despite this, I always put off watching it in favour of larger or more popular series like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Attack on Titan, Naruto, you get the idea. And once I found out that the series was only 6 episodes long, I thought, perfect! I can smash out the series in one day, easy. But because I had this thought, I kept thinking about it as a 2.5 hour movie instead of 6 20-something minute long episodes that I could watch at any time. So, I kept putting it off in favour of more popular and more current series, so that when my friends were talking about anime, I would always have an input for our conversations. But now, I've gotten kind of burnt out on binging longer series, and I'm at the point now where even a 26 episode series looks long to me. I binged all 26 episodes of Demon Slayer in 3 days, just so that I was able to watch the movie when it got released in cinemas in Australia, and even just doing that exhausted me on watching any anime for like 2 weeks. But fast forward to this week. Once again, one of my friends expressed disappointment when I had told them that I had not yet watched Fooly Cooly while I was streaming. Twitch.tv/CarTheAussie, by the way. And I thought, damn it, it's time. I've heard nothing but good things about this anime and it's only 6 episodes. I'll watch it over 6 days if I have to, but I'm watching Fooly Cooly. So, I finally watched Fooly Cooly. What did I think? Well, thanks to the series only being 6 episodes, I think it's easiest to break down my thoughts per episode and then give my overall thoughts. Straight off the bat, I like that what little setup there is for our characters comes through in natural sounding conversation. There's no exposition dump at the start of the episode, there's no characters that point out everything that's happening on screen like the audience is dumb, and the animation is smooth as hell. The music complements everything that happens in this first episode very well. It almost feels like the music itself is a character. There was a really strange manga panel sketch style for a couple of minutes, which felt pretty jarring at first, but I really started to appreciate how much it actually stood out, despite the constant use of the words foolying and coolying. I also really appreciated the slowness of the episode being topped off by a fun action scene with a fun bass riff playing in the background. The characters we're introduced to in episode 1 didn't really click with me at first. However, a couple of minutes into episode 2, I found myself really connecting with the characters and caring what happened to them. Once again, the music complements the episode perfectly, with background music playing frequently, and even some scenes that would usually be boring for me are still entertaining thanks to the music. The imagery in some parts is truly beautiful. I was along for the ride, but the final few minutes of episode 2 are when I was really hooked, especially this scene. Another episode, another random thing coming out of our main character Naota's head. And you get the gist of the music in the series. I'll talk more about it when I'm discussing the series as a whole at the end. The episode revolves around a school play, oddly enough, but like always, it results in a fight scene between our robot friend Kanti, who for some reason can eat curry, and a monster that comes from one of our characters' heads. I enjoyed this more than the first episode, but less than the second. I was a little confused as to why Naota, Haruko, and Kanti were all playing baseball, but it did break things up a bit. Not that Fooly Cooly has been stale at this point. Each episode's story feels different, except for something coming out of the character's head, and then Kanti fighting them. That's a staple. I should note that this anime is only rated PG in Australia, but has some very sexually suggestive scenes in this episode. There was one scene in the first episode that was sexually suggestive, the sketched Fooly and Coolying scene, but it's way more explicit here in episode 4. I don't mind as an adult, but I probably wouldn't let a kid watch this anime, despite the rating it was given here in Australia being kid-friendly. Not since Naruto have I seen so many characters in an anime say the word eyebrows. And yes, I am fully aware that Fooly Cooly came out many years before Naruto did, so I don't want to see shit about that in the comments. This episode had another super surreal and weird scene in which I'm kind of confused about what was real and what was imaginary. Also, at this point in the story, I'm still confused at the relationship between Naota and Haruko. It seems like Naota has a crush on Haruko, which is kind of weird as she has like 10 years on him. But what is even weirder to me is Haruko seems to encourage it and even instigate it in the first place. One thing I did really enjoy about this episode is the revelation that Naota's head is being used as a portal. Things aren't just growing out of his head, they're being pulled from somewhere. I also really loved the imagery in the end of the episode, but if you're epileptic, I would probably steer clear of this episode, which means that because it's 1/6 of the anime, you may need to skip the anime completely. This episode feels like it starts off even more chaotic than the previous episodes in the series, which is really saying something. It also feels weird that the anime makes Haruko and Naota actually kiss this time, as, once again, Naota's like 10 to 12 years old and Haruko is around 20. It feels even weirder when you realize a portion of this episode is Naota fighting his father over Haruko. I know that it's just anime and a bunch of drawings, but it still feels strange. Special mention to the South Park reference here. And look, at this point, I don't know what Fooly Cooly means. Like, the term in the anime. It gets thrown around to mean many different things, and no meaning seems to stick. I don't know how many people would agree with me, but this definitely felt like the weakest episode of the series so far. The animation quality didn't feel like it was quite up to the previous episodes, and they also didn't take any risks with a different or quirky animation style like the previous episodes sometimes used. Still a good episode, and a fun one at that, but for a series that's only 6 episodes long, I feel like I need to mention something if an episode feels weaker than others. I appreciated the teacher having so much trouble with chopsticks. I feel seen! I found it interesting that Haruko and Kanti were missing for the first portion of the episode, as they feel like the real main characters of the series, not Naota, despite Kanti never saying a word. I was super happy to see the manga style animation part return. The first time I ever watched the first episode, I thought the manga style was odd, but charming. Now that I've gotten it again in the final episode, I really appreciate it, especially since episode 5 was missing a uniquely animated portion. Now, the episode really liked breaking the fourth wall, especially when characters refer to Naota as the main character. That's my job! I still don't know the kind of relationship Naota and Haruko have, but it was sweet watching Naota break down because he missed Haruko when she was missing. The final episode seemed to lack the hopeful feeling I got from some of the early episodes. It really does feel like the final episode in the series, despite Fooly Cooly not having a clear beginning, middle, and end. So, I finished Fooly Cooly. And do I know what the hell happened? Nope. I'm gonna look through the wiki and some forums to try and find out what happened, but I feel like it's one of those things I'm not gonna get completely. Fun though. I looked up the story in a coherent text form and I still don't fully understand it. Does that matter or affect my enjoyment of the anime as a whole? No, not really. Now, I watched Fooly Cooly in the English dub, which I know is blasphemy to a lot of anime fans, but I personally felt like I was going to enjoy it more in the dub, and since I got a massive, unexplainable nostalgia hit from it, I think I was right to watch it in dub for my first viewing. Now, in saying that, I did have some issues with the English dub. Haruko was voiced by Carrie Walker, and was fine for the most part, but her voice acting was definitely rough in some parts. She sometimes sounded like she was trying to yell in a library, but this was her first voice acting role ever, so I definitely think it's forgivable. And she's gone on to have a fantastic voice acting career, where she definitely found her footing. But I think the worst voice acting is coming from Stephanie Scher, who voices Mamimi. Mamimi's character is intended to be soft-spoken, but compared to every other character who was voiced confidently, her shy, monotone voice definitely stands out. But, just like Carrie Walker, this was a very early voice acting gig in Stephanie Scher's career, her third ever in 3 years. So once again, it's forgivable, not that they would ever care about some minuscule YouTuber's opinion. I loved the animation in Fooly Cooly. It was super fluid and fun, and most of the time it was interesting. There were definitely some scenes where characters were static and there was just audio of the characters talking with no real animation, but I'm going to assume that was the price to pay for having super fluid and interesting animation the rest of the time. Not to mention the uniquely animated parts nearly every episode had. Special mention to the manga panel style segments in the first and last episode. I mentioned earlier in the video that the music almost felt like its own character, and I stand by that. The fun bass riffs, the psychedelic guitars, it feels like it belongs in Scott Pilgrim. A, that's a compliment from me, and B, I am fully aware that Scott Pilgrim, both in print and film, came after Fooly Cooly. After the 4th episode, I realized just how much I really loved the music, so I looked up the soundtrack, only to find out the entire thing was done by Japanese rock band The Pillows. Needless to say, I've been listening to the soundtrack in my everyday listening playlist, and I'm glad that Fooly Cooly introduced me to this fantastic band. The music always felt perfect with whatever was happening on screen, and The Pillows did such a good job with the soundtrack, I really don't think anyone else could have done a better job. I really enjoyed my time with Fooly Cooly, and despite never watching it before, I got a huge feeling of nostalgia from it. It feels like the kind of anime I might have watched when I was a kid, mainly in the animation style, voice acting, and music. Maybe it's because it did originally come out at the same time as other anime I watched as a kid. Whether you treat Fooly Cooly as a 2.5-hour movie or a 6-episode anime series, the end result is a fun ride with a vibe so fine, you'll want to get lost in the absurdity of this world. I suggest to anyone watching this, find the Fooly Cooly soundtrack, add it to your playlist, and get lost in your thoughts. The anime and soundtrack are one hell of a ride.